How to live a fearless life. Today I would like to talk a little bit about how to control fear and how to go about fear and how not to let fear control your life, but you control fear so that you have control over your own life. Now, we all know fear. We all experience fear in our lives, and we all know the paralyzing effect that it can have sometimes. But it's also beneficial because it protects us from life-threatening situations. I had my share of fear in my life. I had an accident when I was 22 years old, got hit by a drunk driver, and I had to deal with a lot of things in my life. And I became fearful, in the beginning at least. I became fearful of how would my life look, how would I cope with it, how would I be accepted, how could I still do sports, would girls like me, because I lost my leg above the knee in that accident. And so a lot of questions came by, and a lot of fears came up, and but I learned to deal with it. I learned to deal with the fears. And one day I had a beautiful dream or vision. I was standing in a house with a couple of friends, and it was just a little house, and suddenly the floor started moving, and we all fell. It just was, we fell in this endless pit, in this endless dark hole, and we all started screaming like, ah! We're falling, and scared to death, literally scared to death. And then I remember I was falling, and I just said, okay, I'm gonna accept the fear. I'm just gonna embrace it, go through it. And suddenly, boom! I stood firmly on the ground. My friends were still falling. They were still falling, and I realized, wow, you just need to accept the fear. Go through it and know what it is, but don't let yourself be controlled by it, and just deal with it. Boom, there I stood. And then I told it to my friends, just go through the fear, accept it. Bang, 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 bang. They all stood right next to me. They looked at each other like, wow, what the hell was that? Well, for me, that was a very big lesson, because it learned me, to deal with fear. If you are able to deal with fear, then you take back control in your life, because fear holds you back. It's a very good thing, to save you from a predator around the corner, or a life-threatening situation. If you don't fall off a cliff and stuff like that, it warns you. And in that situation, it is really good, because it just warns you of not to do anything stupid, or of a predator around the corner who might kill you. But other than that, fear can also limit you very much, because what happens with fear? It creates a feeling it creates a reaction from the brain, from the back of the brain, which is your reptilian brain, and it gets into a freeze, fight, or flight mode. So it really prepares the entire system, your entire body, to be on high alert, and to pick one of those three: either get the hell out of there, freeze and hide, or go fight it. And it's a very primitive, basic feeling and urge that comes up, and the whole body is just focused on that. Now and then, when the predator leaves, or when the imminent danger is gone, you come back to a resting situation, and you can continue with doing the things that you were doing when going on with your life. But today our fears have become so much more subtle. They are so we are so much more afraid of so many things. The predator, like the tiger or something, is not there anymore, but the predator still may be there. It might be your boss, it might be the company that you're working for, or there's so many things in the news that you might be afraid of, and it's constantly there. It's constantly there in the background, that fear. And when it becomes more subtle and it becomes more long-term, it's not that imminent as fear anymore, but it becomes stress. You become stressed about life, because you are full of fear of all the things that may happen to you. And sometimes these fears are the basis of the stress, because stress in principle is just a derivative of fear. It's just a little more subtle expression of fear, but it's constantly there. And so yeah, when you are in a stressful situation, it means that you're constantly in this freeze, fight, or flight mode. And there is no space for for rest, for introspection, or for contemplation, or for balance, or for just to be cool with everything and have an overview of your life, because you're constantly in this fighting or freeze or flight mode. Much more subtle than when there's an imminent danger, but it's still there. And stress, therefore, is, if it's there longer term, it's also one of the things that keeps us in that reptilian brain, and is actually very damaging to our body, because stress is one of the biggest causes of diseases. Because we are constantly in this tense mode, and we don't have the possibility to relax. And so, yes, stress is a basis of, is a derivative of fear. And fear, what is fear actually? Yeah, I mean, if you want to become fearless, you need to understand what fear really is, and because it has a function. It has a function to warn you, and it's signaling you something. It's telling you, it's warning you about something. It's trying to tell you something, and learning the message behind fear can be extremely beneficial, because it helps you to deal with it, to cope with fear. So there are there's several basic fears, core fears they're called, and the opinions vary what they are exactly. I'll just mention a few. And the first one is fear of death. Then you have the fear of rejection, or not belonging, that you're being outcast from the group. There's the fear of not being good enough, not being able to cope with the things that are expected of you, or that you expect of yourself. There's the fear of ill health, and there's a fear of not being loved. We all need love, and if we don't have love, we all are afraid that we will not be loved enough. And there's a fear of that life is meaningless, that there's no fulfillment, that it has no meaning. And most of the fears and stresses can be related back to exactly those core fears. Now, if you have a fear, you can derive it back to one of those core fears, and you can see what in your life is not in the right situation that fear appears. And so it's trying to tell you something, that something is not as it should be, because you are afraid of it. And so to acknowledge what that fear is trying to tell you, gives you a vision of what you should change maybe in your life to let that fear go away and to go through it. And because if you're in a freeze, fight, or flight mode, you freeze, you're standing still. There's no room for growth or moving forward in life. It's not, because you are just, you're controlled by fear. So in order to change or to grow in life, you need to be without fear, and you need to go through that fear. And for that you would need courage. And because courage is a simple thing. It's being afraid but doing it anyway, and going through it, and not let fear control you. We're so controlled by fear these days in our society, and it makes us getting nowhere. You get nowhere with that. So, yeah, understanding what the fear is trying to tell you, and then acknowledge it, and go through it, and conquer it, and not let fear control you, and it sets you free, it liberates you, because you're not being held back anymore by life. You are taking back control of your own life. And so yes, that's a way how to deal with fear. That's the way you become fearless. Because if you're fearless, just imagine that you have no fear at all, then how your life could look, or what decisions you might have taken differently in the past if you would have not been fearful. And so having a fulfilled life, and a life full of growth and happiness, is a life where you control fear and you take control back into your life. So if you'd like to learn a little bit more about how to control your fear, and you can just maybe have a look at some more videos, or click on the link below, and you can even schedule a call and talk a little bit more about fear, and how you can cope with your fears.